looking at Stud Hunters from 1984.
Here we come! Oh, and this is right. Does it look good enough to eat? Hi, I'm Fisher. I'm looking for some really beautiful guys.
Sounds interesting.
It's for a woman photographer, but you have to have a real nice body and big.
I don't need the roses, leave the candy in the box. I don't want the diamonds, leave the fur on the box. Don't wanna hear
Hi.
your romance.
Oh, hi, Randy.
I'm hunting for the hard love muscle, yeah.
Wait till you see the Polaroids I took this afternoon.
It's funny, when looking up this film, there's another film called Stud Hunters from 2002, directed by Candido Royale, and I thought that's an interesting kind of coincidence there, but it looks like this might actually be a remake of the film. If I had known this previously, I actually would have probably made an effort to watch this, even though this is past the golden age. Obviously, this is 2002, but I watched a little brief clip online. It does have a little bit of the same kind of variant of the theme song, as well as the tagline being similar. The tagline on this film being a hard man is hard to find, and according to IMDb, the tagline on the 2002 one is "It's good to find a hard man." So not quite as catchy, but you know, it's an interesting film to remake nonetheless. So yeah, Stud Hunters, 1984. We're looking at the Blu-ray here, put out by Quality X. This was put out earlier this year, I believe. I don't remember what month it was exactly, but I've had this for a little while, and I thought it would be a good opportunity to dive into it. Now, I may not be as knowledgeable with a film like this because Sue Randall is somebody who is a very interesting figure in her own right, but I'm not super familiar with her work. She doesn't have a whole lot of directed credits to her name. I know she started out primarily as a model to photographer, and the films that she has directed include, at least from the golden age, is a lot of the Suze's centerfolds 1, 2. Now here's interesting. 1, 2, and I think these are out of order because they're all from 81, 82, 83, but then it goes 4, 3, 5, 7. So I think whoever put this on IMDb has got it incorrect. But also Kiss and Tell from 1980, Miss Passion from 1984, and then it looks like there's a gap from Penthouse Letters Volume 1, 93, which is after the period I'm interested in, to Penthouse Pet of the Year, Playoff 94, and then Addicted to Sex in 2004. So I'm not super familiar with her whole story, but I know that she had dabbled, or she had done modeling, photography, different work beforehand. And actually, interesting to jump ahead a little bit is that on the interview on the disc, Misty Reagan, who plays the closest to the main character on this, she talks about how she's playing something similar to Sue Randall in a way, kind of going after these guys and all that. But anyways, so Stud Hunters is put out by Quality X, and this film is it's a very interesting film, I gotta say. It's a film that I have now watched twice now, and I think on a second viewing, I actually think I liked it a bit more the first time. I mean, first off the bat, you have this really great theme song, man. I mean, any film with its own theme song in and of its own right is great to me, and it's catchy, man. Once you hear it, it'll be stuck in your head, you know? You'll be walking down the street going, Stud Hunters! I'm off tempo, but you know, I'm trying to remember the lyrics. It's, need some hardcore love and Stud Hunters, or something like that, you know? But it gets stuck in your head. It's great stuff. There are some great shots early on where they're filming like on the beach and stuff, and they have the main recruiter girl played by, I believe it was Pippi Anderson in that role, who's going on actually finding these guys. So basically, what's going on in this film is that there's this kind of photography, sort of modeling agency, more kind of like photography in a way, ran by Misty Reagan. And you know, she there's a lack of guys in the photos that she wants to do. It's mainly just a lot of girls and stuff. So basically, she sends Pippi Anderson to go out, find these guys, get them, you know, give them the business card, and kind of get them. Hey, you want to come back? You want to do this and that? And actually, the plot for, I would say, probably the first half of it, a common thing I've read about this film, which I have to agree with on, is that really the plot kind of starts to fade away about halfway through. I mean, even early on, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. It's sort of like, this chick's going out there, she's just having sex with these guys. It's like, for the sake of the film, she's gonna want to have a bunch of sex, but she's trying to find these guys for the agency or for the photography, and it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And even what they decide to show early on is kind of peculiar, because early on the phone, Misty Reagan is talking to Michael Morrison, and which I think he was like the head of the, I forgot what exactly his role was, but basically, so it's kind of, to show he's a hot shot, he's in this hot tub, he's hanging out of it, he's on the phone, this woman's blowing him, he's like, okay, he's a big hot shot. And I think for a visual kind of sight gag to kind of cut back and forth, it's like, oh, that's kind of funny, it's sort of like what I was talking about a little while ago with A Formal Faucet, where they cut to Paul Thomas on the phone and he's having sex with various women and all that, and it's like, oh, okay, it's kind of funny. It's obviously a big hot shot, he can get around and all that. But then they play out that whole sequence, and at first they keep cutting back and forth on the phone conversation, and then when it's over, you're like, okay, the film's going to move on, but then it actually cuts back to him and the whole sequence, and it goes on for a while, and it's just kind of like, for the sake of a narrative, it's kind of strange they would go that way to show that whole sequence, especially when it's not totally, like, they keep cutting back to her, so it doesn't even totally fit. But still, it would have been better, I think, in the long run, to just kind of have that kind of visual gag, then move on from it. But also early on, I want to say as well, the set design, at least the set design of the photography place where they're filming all the chicks and all that all looks actually pretty solid. I mean, at least maybe like a lot of the props and stuff they're using, they have like a big like shopping cart full of like women's like toys and all that, and it's very funny. You have one of the guys there is like swinging them around, and he's being very goofy with it. The humor in this film, I would say, actually comes through fairly well, and it's not an overtly funny film, but there's a handful of dialogue throughout that actually kind of caught me off guard and made me laugh out loud. They're talking about one of the girls, and the guy's like, oh, what? She's a registered sex offender. And it's just like a bizarre piece of dialogue that they decided to use. But yeah, as it's going along, we cut to Pippi Anderson, and I mean, really, a lot of us. We have Pippi Anderson in the film. We have, like I said before, we have Misty Reagan, we have Amy Allison, Joanna Storm, and all that. And, they're all fine in the roles, but really, I think one of the strongest aspects of the film, if what you're looking for, is that I think it's a very well-directed film. I was watching a different adult film recently, and I won't even say the film. It was actually a film I was going to do for the show, but ultimately I decided not to, because there's another film I had to watch, and too much time had passed, and I didn't want to go back and rewatch the first one, because I wasn't too crazy with the first one. But I remember I was watching that film, and one of my big problems with that is it's sort of a problem I have with a lot of a handful of adult films. And I say handful, I mean like separating the strong filmmakers from kind of the gun for hire sort of deal, or not even gun for hire, but I'm saying more so less craftsmanship, is that I'm far less interested when the camera work and the direction is not very good, because oftentimes they'll just put the camera down and then all the action will happen in frame of that camera with minimal cuts, so you'll have these elongated sequences that go on for about a minute or two, if that. I mean, and you feel the length on them, you feel that everybody's kind of awkwardly moving in and out of the frame. It doesn't totally work. And here, I don't know who the director of photography was on this. I do apologize, but I do think that the direction in this, and especially the editing, is really strong. The way that in the sex sequences they're able to cut back and forth a lot. I mean, especially in the big sequence in the middle of the film, which I'll talk about in a little bit. The way that whole sequence is put together, the way it's filmed and edited, it's all really top notch. So if you're going into a film like this for purely the eroticism, I think that's where it really shines. Because where it does have its shortcomings is in the narrative. Because, I mean, you can even have a ridiculous plot where they have this agency, or they have this modeling, photography, whatever, and okay, you gotta go find these guys. I mean, it's a lot of, like, nude modeling and all that. That's one thing, and then she has sex and whatever. That's fine in its own right. But the problem is that halfway through, the film does start to kind of peter out a little bit. The sex sequences are still shot well, but they become like shorter and shorter, I noticed. Like, there's one, like, towards the end of the film with a couple of them with, I'm going to get the names up here so I get it all correctly. But it's with Amy Allison, Greg Derrick, Lisa Lake, and Mark Wallace, which is just really I don't think it was the strongest put together. But what I was saying before is that the scene in the middle where Pippi Anderson is recruiting one of these guys, I forgot who it was exactly, I do apologize, but she's going to this gym basically saying like, all right, here's my card, we'll meet around and all that. And she goes to this kind of like gangbang. And it honestly, that whole, I mean, from this era, it's not something that you saw, at least not that I saw very commonly, in a lot of the films that I've seen is put together like this. I always kind of considered something like that a bit more contemporary, but I mean, I'm not an expert or anything like that. I'm just from what I've seen, the films I've seen, but that is probably the highlight of the film. I think that's the best, well put together. The music in the rest of the film is fine, but by putting it all together in that moment, it is definitely the strongest part of the whole film. That's the part of the film where you could see people going specifically for that part, because it's very erotic, it's very well put together, it's solid. Although with Pippi Anderson, I'm actually not very familiar with her as an actor at all. She only has a couple of credits to her name. I really don't know anything about her, and it was weird. I don't know if she had an accent or she was dubbed or what was going on, but there were a couple times when she was talking and it sounded like the audio sounded kind of peculiar. I can't totally explain it, because I mean, honestly, for the most part, I mean, the transfer on this is very well done. The audio for the most part is well done. There were a couple times where I noticed a couple hiccups, which is understandable for a film like this that might not have the best audio quality. I actually think there was two different audio options on this. There was the it doesn't say it back in here, but I think there was a version that's in mono, and then a version that, I don't know if it's in stereo, but I didn't listen to the mono one, because there were a couple times throughout here that I thought it was in mono because it sounded kind of off, but apparently it wasn't. Truthfully, when it comes to audio situations like that, or audio stuff like that, I'm not people can pick up on that better than I can, in terms of like different types of like audio, different types of like sound design and all that, and I may not be the best to kind of talk about something like that. But the whole thing I think is actually, another thing I thought was funny about that scene is that, so she finishes off the whole sequence, and then she kind of walks out. I was like, I guess I'll see you at the studio. And it's like, well, do they even know where you are? And I'm thinking like, all right, well, she gave him the business card and all that. But it's just funny. She just does like, there's no time, there's no date. I'll see you at the studio. He's like, all right, well, I don't even know your name, dude. Like, and they never see the guys again in the movie. So they might as well have just said like, all right, thanks for nothing, lady. It's just ridiculous, man. And that's fine. I mean, you can get with a ridiculous plot like this, because I think with how well together most of the film is in terms of just the eroticism, it is very well put together. It is, you can see, I don't know how much Sue Randall put into the photography on the film. I haven't looked anything up about it. And actually, I do wish that this Blu-ray had some more features of it, because this is a little dry when it comes to features, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. But I do kind of get the sense of her being a little more, okay, let me see here, actually. I can pull it up right here. Says Tommy French and Louis Gerald, both camera operators on this. And I don't even think I'm even familiar with them. Yeah, Tommy French has only this credit to his name, as well as Louis Gerald. Those might be pseudonyms, though, so I really couldn't tell you. But it does feel a bit more calculated in its photography on this, a bit more of what they're putting into the frame rather than just, well, they'll perform in the frame, and there's that. It's a lot of times where they specifically know when to pan down, when they know, or to bring the camera down, when they know to pan over, just different ideas like that, or different shots like that, where we're not just focusing strictly on the nudity or on the genitalia, but it's a bit more artistic than that. And I think that really comes through, whether intentional or not. To me, as a viewer, it definitely came across as having a steady kind of flow and a steady kind of momentum. And it also, as well as where it's being shot as well. I mean, it's a lot of interiors. Yeah, definitely they're shooting it in that studio. But I do like a lot of the times when they actually go out onto the beach. And it's funny because towards the end you have, I think it was Pippi Anderson who was walking around then. I apologize, I don't remember. But you can see people in the foreground just looking directly at the camera. There are these gnarly shadows, which are just, it's from the sun, yeah, but it's just like you see everybody just walking by, looking right at the camera. Kind of makes you wonder if they had like any, if they really kind of ran out and did it, or if they had any sort of lighting at all, unless it was just the sun directly behind the camera. But I imagine that probably something like that, you probably wouldn't want to be running out with a lot of lighting equipment and all that. But I mean, the actual narrative of the film, the script is fine. It's one thing. It serves a function. But the way it's all shot, the way it's all put together, it is a very well done film, I have to say. And on a second viewing, I think I liked it more than the first time. Once you know you're getting into a situation like this, because even with the Fred Lincoln films I was talking about, even with Daisy May, I did have to say, even though I thought the directing was better on that film, there are still those hiccups there that I don't think this film has. That I think that, for both these kind of films, they're going for more of primarily an erotic kind of value, or an erotic kind of, not a value, erotic kind of intention with that. That film more so, don't get me wrong, I mean, that film was very light to minimal on plot, but this film is going for that bit more, and I think that bit more does actually help this in the long run. I mean, yeah, it's a well put together film. I like this. I did enjoy it. The music works well. The comedy works well. Like shot well. As for the Blu-ray itself, so on the inside we have reversible artwork. We have from the previous DVD, I think, on the right hand side. And then also a Japanese release on the left, interestingly enough. I'm not actually sure where this comes from, but I think that's what I said before. It is funny also as well, is that on the previous poster, is that it does list starring Pippi Anderson and Joanna Storm. It's like, all right, brother, I don't think that's the first two actors that come to mind when I think of this film. It's just ridiculous, but it is a well put together packaging on that front. As for features, it's a little light on features, unfortunately, but it's understandable for something like this. I mean, Sue Randall is still with us, so it would have been nice to have a kind of an interview with her, or a new interview with her. But we have as well, or even like her daughter, who's also a photographer now, I believe. But yeah, we have the newly scanned and restored in 4K from its original 16mm camera negative. We have a brand new audio interview with actress Misty Reagan, moderated by historian Casey Scott, and that plays over the film as a commentary, but it doesn't, interestingly enough, it doesn't really feel like a commentary, and it doesn't really feel like an interview. It feels more so like a conversation, because there's a lot of sidetracking in the conversation, and there's a lot of times where they go, they're not even talking about, the films anymore, because they're kind of like not, like, side stuff, which is fine, although I think I would have liked a bit more of an informative or even a retrospective kind of opinion of just like kind of filming them, putting it all together. And I mean, there's a little bit of that, she talks very well of Sue Randall, talks about how she was really good at kind of making the women feel very comfortable and make them feel like very good about themselves, not just to get a good direction out of them, but also just in general. And that stuff was great. I think I do wish it was a bit more structured in the conversation. It does kind of trail off multiple times, but overall it's not a bad conversation, as well as the theatrical trailer, subtitles, and the disc is region free. So I would say if you're looking for a more plot-driven narrative adult film, you might not like this one. It does have that comedy, and it does have those moments in the first half that do work, until it does eventually kind of peter off. If you're looking for primarily just an erotic, well-shot, interesting, enjoyable adult film with some good set design, some like I said, the sex sequences being shot and edited together very well to keep a kind of constant flow and kind of constant momentum, then I think you would have a good time with Stud Hunters. I did like this film, and I would recommend this if that is up your alley. I'd be very interested to see more of Sue Randall's stuff, especially Kiss and Tell. I'm not familiar with that film. Her other stuff I'm not knowledgeable at all. But either way, Stud Hunters, it's a good film, and I'd recommend it for sure. And that's all I got. So thank you for another episode of Peephole Pictures. If you have any comments, concerns, recommendations, or anything like that, feel free to leave them down below. I always enjoy doing these episodes, and I hope you enjoy listening to them as well. And that's all I got. So thank you so much.